it's Mio again. Firstly, I feel like what I said in that previous video where there's gonna be some videos and all that kind of stuff, I didn't do any of that. So for that, I am sorry, but this video will cover some questions that I did get for They Ask Me Anything. The majority of them, or all of them except for one, has come from Twitter, and I did answer some of those questions over there. And since I did answer a lot of those questions, this video is gonna be a little bit more scripted than usual. But before I jump into that, I keep saying this over and over again in different videos, but there are different videos that will be coming. It's been a bit of a gray zone for me, or it's been a bit challenging for me the last little while. It's like I've just been really tired, and there have been times when I've had some low moods where I just get sad and maybe lonely and kind of sometimes struggling with different things that are going on. A big part of it is just how I've been feeling, but also there's been a couple of times where my cancer marker that's taken by blood tests have jumped up a couple of times, and it might mean that I'm not responding to treatment. And the only way to confirm that would be a visual scan, which is scheduled to happen during the first week of August. And so until then, we don't know anything for certain. And I've just decided to put everything I have into strengthening my immune system to the best of my ability. And if there's anything I can actively do to support my body to keep supporting me through this life journey, I figured, okay, like this is the time to do it. So that's, I needed to get my head around that. And that's something that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. I think last week when I did have my oncology appointment, the look in my oncologist's eyes did bum me out a little bit, but I really needed to put that aside. She is an oncologist. She has a lot of experience. She's been really fantastic with me and her team, but at the end of the day, no one has the complete answers to anything. It's especially anything that has to do with this disease anyway. So I'm gonna try to do my best to work on my immune system. Here's a cat, if you happen to see ears that are popping up. So I'm gonna do what I can for the next month before that scan to just take care of myself and to do the best that I can to prolong this life in a quality of life kind of a way. I just also wanted to say, since I had the energy today, I figured that I would record this update and the Ask Me Anything that I mentioned in the last video. And I usually don't work off of a script, but I already answered a lot of these questions on Twitter, and I thought I would pretty much use the same answers here because I think that they were pretty thought out when I answered them on Twitter. And all but one question came from Twitter, so here we go. So I asked probably about 3 weeks ago or so on Twitter, and also here a couple weeks ago on YouTube, if there are any questions that I can answer about my particular situation, my diagnosis, my journey, whatever it might be. And I did get some questions. So here are some answers. So at Ibe1 on Twitter asked, how was your cancer found initially? So in terms of timing, I was initially diagnosed in September of 2020, and I first started noticing the itching and indigestion and like right in the middle of the pandemic. So probably, I don't know, like around like July of like 2020, I just noticed like that I just had like severe itching all around my body and just strange indigestion that I never experienced before. And I just chalked it up to stress and all the different things that were going on at the time, being like right dab, like 4 months into the pandemic or whatever it was. And at the time, initially, I had consulted telehealth, who just gave me some topicals and some antacids or something like that. And like in telehealth at the time, it wasn't my primary GP whom I should have consulted, but I didn't, you know, in my mind, I'm like, well, this doesn't seem like a big deal, and I'm sure he's dealing with a lot, so I'll just, you know, go on telehealth and see what they can tell me. And they ended up like spending like literally like under a minute with me and just prescribed me this topical and antacids or something like that. But about roughly a month later, I did decide to contact my primary care physician or my GP because nothing was getting better. It was actually just getting worse. And a few days before the appointment that I had to come and see him, I'd been spending a lot of times indoors because, again, like the pandemic stuff that was going on, and I didn't have an opportunity to look at myself in natural sunlight because our place is actually pretty dark. This is a setup now like that I have of a light that's in front of me, that when I started recording YouTube videos, but you know, at the time I didn't really have a light that really kind of illuminated me naturally, I guess it would be, or well. And so it was difficult to tell that it was extremely jaundiced. My husband and I, Joe and I, had rented a car, and I was sitting in the car looking at myself in the mirror, and I was just like, my goodness, I am yellow. Like I am, like my eyes were yellow, and it's just like my skin had a yellow tinge, and it to the point where it was very, very surprising. So I called my doctor, and it was a Sunday, but he answered, and he advised me to go to the emergency room the first thing the next day. And he used to work there, so he had some insights into how best to navigate the situation. And it was such a blessing because he actually stayed in touch with me the entire time that I was in the ER, which actually took quite a bit of time. And he knew a lot, I think, some of the senior people there, so he was speaking to them as well. At the time, they didn't take a CT scan, but they did take an X-ray, and they saw a mass in my pancreas. And even though my GP had asked for a CT, they just diagnosed me from the X-ray and said, you know, there is a mass in your pancreas, and it looks like you have cancer. And so they prescribed some morphine and told me that that I had pancreatic cancer. And I didn't know, and I still don't know a lot about cancer in general, but I knew that pancreatic was a big one, a tough one, a challenging one. And I left ER in a daze, and it might be a little bit different now in ER, but at the time you couldn't have any visitors or anything like that. So you're in there, and I was in there by myself getting a diagnosis, and it was tough. But I'm very lucky to be living in Toronto and in Canada, where we have healthcare. And we also have a world-class cancer treatment center that particular hospital is in connection to. And I had an appointment with an oncologist who is with my oncologist currently, and was further assessed within a few days, got the CT scan, all that kind of stuff. Based on the initial look at the CT scan, I was diagnosed with stage 2, but it was much more scrutinized, I guess. The CT scan was scrutinized. It did show that it had metastasized, which means that it was in other parts of my body apart from the pancreas, which means stage 4. It was inoperable and it was incurable. So that was the diagnosis that I received. And at the time, when I asked what my prognosis was, I was told that it could be a year, maybe more, maybe less. That's something that I have quoted, I think, numerous times, but I'm, blessed to have had all this time up until this point, because there's a very small percentage of folks who are diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer who make it to a year and almost 9 months now, and very, very grateful for that. And even though there have been times when I've asked for some changes with the team at Princess Margaret, my core team has been the same, and they have been incredible. I am so grateful to have received and still receive the care that I get. And I also have a video about my diagnosis I made on my 1-year diagnosis anniversary last year. I'll leave the link in the description, since I don't know how to link the video itself here. So if you're interested in checking that out, I will leave the link to that particular video below. Ibe1 on Twitter also asked, I was curious what you do to stay positive. Like, are you still able to do your hobbies? When I was first diagnosed, I knew the importance of taking care of my mental and emotional health as much as possible. I have a strong belief in the importance of maintaining one's mental health throughout life, and have been doing what I call my personal work for many, many years. But I have to admit that the diagnosis completely threw me for a curveball. And how I've been thinking and how I thought about the world and my life up until that point, I knew had to change because the rest of my life was going to look a lot different than I thought that it was going to look. So as I've described it to a number of people, I realized that I needed a new operating system for my brain to deal with this new change in my life. And so within a short period of me being diagnosed, I consulted and have been working with end of life specialists, like palliative folks, and people who have experience in hospice, and they've really helped me reprogram, so to have that new operating system built and kind of installed. And there was quite a bit of a dedication given to that, and that's actually helped me to have this outlook that I have on these experiences or these challenges that I'm facing. And there's definitely times when I get sad and I get lonely and upset, but I stay present. I try to stay present with them. I don't try to say, it's like, no, I shouldn't think those things or feel those things. I need to push them away or whatever. Like in those moments when they do come up, I try my best to have compassion and empathy for myself and to acknowledge it's like, yeah, like, of course I would be upset. Of course I would be sad. Of course there'll be times when I'm lonely because I'm this one individual going through this one particular experience. And even with all the amazing love and support that I've gotten, and that part has been incredible, there are times when still I can feel lonely, and that can be really, really difficult. But I do my best to take in everything that comes up for me, and that's including some of the difficult stuff. But I also do choose to try to think about things from a perspective that I have always had, which is more along the lines of like, you know, like what best works for me. And what best works for me is thinking about love and laughter and care and connections, and that also definitely helps. And like I mentioned too, like it's been incredible the amount of love and support that I have received from people who I have known for a very long time to people I will never meet and just know their names, and that's been incredible. And as for my hobbies, it's been challenging because I've been very much limited based on like physical decline that I've experienced. I'm trying to do my best to keep up with that, but you know, I used to like to go for long walks, and Joe and I just walk together for just distances and it's not something that I can do anymore. I have a love of good food, music, connections, and conversations, and those I have been able to have a lot of, and I'm grateful for that. I'm so thankful for all the love and support that I have received and still continue to receive. So thank you so much. Deborah Witalis, and I hope I got her last name pronounced correctly, on Twitter asked, what are your thoughts on hospice and end of life plans and thoughts? You are so positive and open with your energy. How do you confront all of this? So what are your thoughts on hospice and end of life plans and thoughts? These are things that I have been thinking about and putting into place for since I've been diagnosed. I have decided on a hospice option plus 2 backups that are also hospice but more in a hospital setting, whereas my first hospice option is in more of a housing setting, and there's like a garden, and I've only seen pictures actually, and this particular question reminded me to get in touch with the hospice option that I have chosen and to do a tour, because I think at this point in the pandemic timeline they may have opened their hospice up to actually visiting, so I think I will be getting in touch with them. But that's my first option, the hospice and the housing situation, and I just feel so good about that I am hoping that even if it's not available when I first need it, that I could maybe be put on a waiting list or something like that, and hope to have that as my end of life option. And the reason why I decided to make a hospice decision is that I didn't want Joe to associate home with my passing. This is a place that we have shared our lives together, and I don't want him to associate home with me passing away here. So also that, and when it gets to the point where I do need hospice care, I feel that like having the professional care and have that be more readily available with people who have experience in dealing with end-of-life care, I think it would be a relief, not just for myself, but also the folks around me as well. And as for my internal work, I do quite a bit of contemplation and educating myself on end-of-life matters philosophically, learning from those who worked in hospice and palliative care. But I also engage quite a bit in meditations on impermanence and a lot of loving kindness meditation work at the moment. I also plan on consulting with a death doula, and I understand having a death doula, it's someone who can guide myself and my loved ones through the process and experience of what it's like to go through the most challenging times of end-of-life process. So that's something that I'm also looking to do in the next little while. And thank you, Deborah, for the question. And Nina 2025 on Twitter asked, has having pancreatic cancer enabled you to discover something new about yourself that you'd like to share? So there are actually a lot that I've discovered about myself, but the biggest ones have been and I kind of beat this one a lot, but it's something that I truly believe in, and it's living from a mindset of love, care, compassion, and empathy is not crucial only to myself through this journey, but I think the world at large, especially with all the challenging things and hard things that are going on in the world. It just feels like a bit of a pebble in a large ocean, but I think that it's an important thing to keep throwing the pebbles of love and compassion and empathy and care into the ocean, and eventually I think that it will all add up, hopefully. And I think the second thing that I've discovered is very little of what I used to get stressed out about before the diagnosis is not the things that I most worry about now or are on top of mind now for me are the quality of my relationships, empathy and love, and I try to keep that sort of on the forefront of what I think about and how I conduct myself on a day-to-day basis. I'm still a work in progress, but I'm doing my best. And I think that it's, I think about how am I doing health-wise and what's going to happen. Those are things that I also think about, and some of that can be challenging when I kind of get my head around it and it starts to kind of spin a little bit, but it's not as much as people might imagine. I don't think about it as often or as much as you might think. At Navy7595 on Twitter asked, have you looked into MAID, which is medical aid in dying? I've looked into MAID, or at least tried to educate myself into MAID and how it works specifically in Canada, but I've not seriously considered it for myself, at least as of now. I make a point not to get too into the weeds in terms of what can happen, but my general understanding, and it was just also confirmed with my oncologist last week, that pancreatic cancer can be very swift when it starts to take over once it's figured out how to do it. And my understanding of MAID, at least in Canada, that it takes some time to navigate. Quality of life for me in general is such that MAID isn't something I'm actively considering, but should it be that there's a prolonged amount of experience of intolerable pain or my mental faculties are about to be seriously impaired, that could definitely be a different story. The only other question I had in relation to MAID, though, is I wonder about life insurance implications and MAID, which I don't really have any info on, but a lot of life insurance policies have a stipulation around suicide, and so I wonder what that would mean in relation to MAID. And the last question, thank you for hanging in, I know this was a long one. Mika on YouTube asked, I teach future healthcare providers, example, nursing, kinesiology, health sciences, public health, etc. What would you tell them when they see someone like you in their clinical journey? Any pearls of wisdom or advice you'd like to pass along? When I sought out a second opinion after my initial diagnosis, the oncologist I spoke to then said to me something that's been actually sort of a guiding principle for me since that time. And he said, you are not just a number, and you don't know what your specific path and outcome and journey is going to be. Have hope. And it was so valuable for me at the time to hear that, because again, like, I think, you know, you can get into the wormhole of Google, the wormhole of support sites and things like that, where it can feel like, you know, you're given a certain diagnosis or some kind of a sentence, and that it's going to go a very specific way, or that there's only one path or one route that it's going to be from diagnosis to the eventual end. But to hear that was really, really powerful for me, because it just gave me a sense of, yeah, like, I can have my own journey and I could control what I can control, which is always something that I have said, or for a very long time anyway, thanks to the personal work that I've engaged in. Try to control what I can control and know the things that I can't, and to leave the stuff that I can't control to whatever is going to happen, but control what I can while I can. And I decided that I wanted to have as rich of a experience that I can have in whatever my health or my circumstances allow me to. So that is something definitely that helped me. And I will also say that providing healthcare is incredibly hard work, and I saw that in action earlier this year when I was in and out of hospital for the first 4 months of the year. But there are certain patients who are going to have a lot of questions, and when they do, it can feel like these patients are a pain in the butt, because they have questions, or they may need more presence than maybe some other patients may. But I think it's important to stay present with each patient's experience, and I think that it makes the work that much more challenging for healthcare providers, but it might make a profound difference for the patient and their experience and their outlook in their journey. So I think that if those two things can maybe be helpful, Armika, and thank you so much for all the challenging, hard work preparing future healthcare providers to do the good work that they do. You're doing some incredible work by doing that. And if you have any other questions, or if there are any further details about anything that I can get into, Mika, please don't hesitate to let me know. And not just Mika, but anybody out there. So like I mentioned, that was like the last question. And I know that there was a lot of bumbling and a lot of me talking and reading in this one, but I hope that there might have been some insights that I have been able to provide. If there are any other questions that come out of these questions, or it's sort of sparked some other things for you, please write it down in the comments below. I can definitely make another video where I answer more questions. I'd love to be able to do that and contribute in any way that I can. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for hanging in if you've hung in for this long. And I send you chef's kisses and love and care. Please, and I hope that you have been taking good care of yourself, and to have the people who you love around you know that you love and care about them. And I send so much love and care your way. After all that, I'll talk to you again real soon.